Yeah. Ma'am, you're muted.
Sorry, I was muted. So we will start today's session with development of interview guide. And yesterday I emphasized that all of you should be there with your laptop today and from today onward, because you need to share your screen for the breakout room activity. So before we, once we will move to the breakout room, there will be 4 breakout room, and that all those room there will be a mentor, and you need to share your screen and show the activity which has been planned for the breakout room. So before we start the interview guide, how to make an interview guide, let's understand the need of an open-ended question. So I assume that all of you know what is an open-ended question and what is a closed-ended question. So closed-ended question is where you give the responses and the person has to choose out of those responses. And an open-ended question is when you give the freedom to the responder to say whatever he or she wants to say. So let's see the difference between a closed-ended question and an open-ended question, because in qualitative, always refrain yourself from asking anything which ends up in yes and no. So if the answer to your question is yes or no, then it is it is not a good question, because then you will not get the transcript, you will not get the responses. The data is, and you have to perform the analysis or the coding on that data. So we will show you a bad transcript and a good transcript also in terms of responses, but always refrain yourself from asking questions where the participant end up saying yes or no. So let's understand the need of an open-ended question. So like if in your hospital, maybe in AIIMS Delhi, you have gone to this hospital and you want to ask from a patient regarding the patient satisfaction level in the hospital. So if you ask this question to one of the respondent, that rate your satisfaction level at AIIMS Delhi on a scale of 1 to 10, because we use this Likert scale quite often in 5-point scale or 7-point or 10-point scale. So now this question is that they have to respond to this question, that is the level of satisfaction at AIIMS Delhi on a scale of 1 to 20, where the 1 means the worst and 10 means the excellent. So from a qualitative research perspective, what is the problem with this research question? Please type in the chat box.
Ma'am, you are muted, ma'am. Ma'am, you have been muted, ma'am.
You're muted, ma'am. Ma'am, you're not
Padgett.
audible, ma'am.
Ma'am, you are inaudible.
I'm sorry, I was my audio was muted. So I'll once again convey all these options. I have told already, but since I was muted, so I'll start. Sorry. Okay, so can you, Dr. Shamshad, can you please go down a little bit? Yes, so it is giving a score, and the reason is not exact reason of satisfaction is not told, reason not elicited. in-depth of the satisfaction won't be able to elicit it. It's just the number. Okay, yes, very good. Ekta is writing, people won't be able to explain exactly about their satisfaction level. Very true. And then Mamta is writing, we have limited choices. Devayan is writing, how and why the rating can't be explored through the rating. Not much of the interpretation can be made. Mrinalini is writing, and then there's no audio. So patient again can't express anything except numbers. Purnima is writing, Sarika is writing, patient. Okay, so Parul is writing, different people will give different opinion, result will vary. So these are responses. Yes, all of you are very right in your statement that this is not giving you the exact degree, and degree that is okay, but the satisfaction in what term, that is very abstract, and just by having a level you will not be able to understand exactly. Again, if I like break this question, because whenever you go to a hospital, it is you go at various places. You go to the registration counter, then you go for the investigation, you go to collect the report, you go for the CT and other allied this investigations, and again you go to the clinician, and then you go to the pharmacist. So there are a lot of places where you move. So just by asking this question, if you ask this question from me, I'm confused, like for what you are asking this. So the patient may say that, well, the response of the doctor was good, but I had to stand in that queue for registration for 2 hours or for 3 hours, and it was very horrible. Again, if at the doctor, this thing also, if somebody asks you what is the level, rate your satisfaction level at the reception counter on a scale of 1 to 10. So, and again, if someone asks you or any responder that rate your satisfaction with doctors at AIIMS Delhi on a scale of 1 to 10, then this is, I have break the question. In that first question, I have asked a very broad question, like the level of satisfaction at AIIMS Delhi. Now I have break it into maybe reception counter and at the doctor. And then again, I'm asking at these two levels. So now, can you tell me what will be the problem with such response? Again, the such response, since you have already answered the previous question, this will limit the response, because here also this may be broken into smaller parts. So like reception, the patient may land up with dilemma. If he has to rate doctor, he may say that the doctor was excellent in his knowledge, but he did not convey to me. He has given very less time, maybe. But this you will not get if it is an close-ended question, because he will only say that, I'm satisfied, like, 1 to 5 scale or 1 to 10, he'll say 5 or 6 or 7, depending on the response which he is thinking in his mind. But exact where he is not satisfied, you will not be able to understand the that particular depth. So such dilemma always remain in such questions where you frame your questions in a 5-point scale or 7-point scale, especially if you are measuring some abstract thing like you are not measuring hemoglobin, you are not measuring creatinine level. So all these are objective because it's a blood measurement. But satisfaction, anxiety, anger, all these, happiness, quality of life. So all these things, although we have a tool for quality of life also, but still many a time people go with the broad-ended questions and do not want to use any of the scale. So both has its advantages and disadvantages. So with such subjective or abstract concept, there will be dilemma, or there will be always a sense of lack of subjectivity, and you are not sure exactly what the patient is thinking or what the type of response, whatever you are getting, whether it is accurately measuring that particular satisfaction level, anxiety level, or anger level. Because we are not giving enough opportunity to the client or to the responder to express his or her view in detail. We are limiting his response. In a 5-point scale or in a 10-point scale, and he may wish to say something more. So just to reiterate, in quantitative research, participants respond through options, because there is a questionnaire, and with most of the questions, we have the responses which are limited, which are like 4 responses, 5 responses, or a Likert scale response. But in quantitative research, participants respond through words. And we have seen yesterday the power of words. So words are very powerful. That's how, if you have the words of the people, because it's the world view in qualitative research, you because you know that it is a multiple reality, it is not a single reality. So there will be multiple perspective in any qualitative research. And that's why you should have words of each and everyone. Then only that multiple perspective you will be able to capture. Now coming to how to develop an interview guide. So there is no right or wrong thing in this, and everybody has their own way of developing an interview guide. But there are some broad rules, and we will discuss about those broad rules. So the first and most important thing is that if you have gone or if you have gone to any participant to take the in-depth interview or a focus group discussion, then it is your responsibility to help them to remember. We cannot expect, because this is a very difficult question. Even if you ask me, how was I feeling, it will be a deductive one, or you can go inductively also, like you have the questions aggregated at one place, but you have not decided in which code or theme you want to move those particular data. So in this literature review, you have a rough idea what was the already existing thing, because in grounded theory, in other interpretive qualitative research design, we read that it is not always necessary that we always develop some new thing. So we may fill the existing gap also, or we are adding something new to the existing theory. That is also an important contribution to the qualitative research. So we should do the literature search first. The second important thing is ask some initial question, and that those initial questions should be very light. That will give the respondent an opportunity to speak. And we'll see in the video, because if you break the ice between you and the responder, then rest of the things becomes very easy, because initially they are also very apprehensive. What kind of questions? Have you ever conducted any in-depth interview with maybe not with anyone? A few of you said yesterday that you could do a qualitative research. So can you share your experience here? I would request, I think few people, Jennifer, if I'm not wrong, she did some qualitative research, and she just wants to whether she did right or not, if I'm okay. Yes. So Jennifer, can you share your experience of your interview with any of the participant, which you think that is worth sharing?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, we did a lot of in-depth interviews, ma'am, because my thesis is wholly based on a mixed method study design only.
Jennifer, we cannot hear you. Can you please check this setting? Oh, I'm sorry. I think I have not changed my. Let me.
Yeah,
Just give me 1 second. Okay. Yes.
Ma'am, am I audible to you?
Yes, I'm sorry. Actually, I did not change my this thing setting. That's why. Yes, you are very much audible. You were audible.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for that. Yeah, actually, we did a lot of interviews, ma'am, since my thesis is wholly based on mixed method study, where we conducted a focus group in discussion, in-depth interview, and also not only that, even my short projects also included a in-depth interview and this key informant interview, ma'am. Actually, I want to share about this topic, even though it's based on small topic only. We did some in-depth interview on the salt consumption at the rural level, ma'am, because
Okay.
where people still they persist, there is some misconception about the presence of iodine in the salt, as they think that it's a chemical, such a thing. So it is really hard for us to conduct such an interview for these people, because their misconception and the misbelief on this is too high when we compare with the other population. So once during the conduction of this interview, we found difficult that how we want to put the questions to the participants, because
Okay.
these misconceptions which also plays in the health of the population, we thought of improving their belief that fortification. We did lot of probing prompts during the interview itself. And what I finally found this, even though if we conduct the in-depth interview, we need some other some technical things so that we can get more information from the population. Since I was doing my post graduation, that's the first time we are conducting. I'm not sure about how to ask such a questions. We just asked formal questions, and we tried to implement, though we missed a lot of parts in that interview question.
Okay. Thank
So
you, Jennifer.
this is, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Do you want to say, I guess I have interrupted you in between. Do you want to continue more, something more? Do you want to?
Yes, ma'am. Because we also conducted some key informant interview about tuberculosis also. Same thing happened because, without a proper training in qualitative, and we entered into the field, and asking for in-depth interview, key informant interview is really difficult. And framing the question, that's a major part, ma'am. We suffered a lot during that period. And while continuing our third year, we improved sometime, and we conducted more and more interviews. By doing that only, we came to know, yeah, forming these questions is easy only, but we need some knowledge about that, and some technical aspects, so that we can involve and we can get more information from the population.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
very true. Very true. And that's how the importance of literature review, because if you are going in the field to take the interview, you should have a thorough, you should be in that mode of asking. And unless and until you are reading that topic many times for the past 10, 15 days or 1 month, then you are well versed with the topic, and now you know what to ask. Because this we also suffered, like we did a project here on, I made yesterday, also made this statement on the respiratory syncytial virus, the uptake of the preparedness of community for the uptake of one more vaccine, that is on RSV. So we did a qualitative, and initially our residents may also share their experience. So I may ask, maybe Ria, can you share that experience with the participant regarding the initial thing when you went initially just with a few this thing, I mean, less of preparedness, and then again you refined yourself in asking questions?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I was involved in this RSV study, mainly going to the field and conducting interviews. So the first day I went, that was just a field test, just for testing, because I had not taken an interview before. That was an in-depth interview. So I took like 2 interviews in our the rural health center about the preparedness, and each interview lasted about like 10 to 12 minutes. And while framing the question, I had the question written in the local language from the interview guide with me. And so I had read that question beforehand, so that I had to look minimum towards my copy and then ask that. So I was asking them, but still there were some questions they were not able to grasp. So I had to reframe myself and ask them. And sometimes I was tendency was to go, my question was framing like more towards close ended. So I had to also keep myself in check, so that my questions sounded more open ended. So that was some problem that I faced during the pilot testing types. And then next time when I went to the field for the real interview and the data collection, there I interviewed one ANM and one ASHA and one maybe end user. And there the questions I found after testing, I was more defined in asking, but still there were some like drawbacks because our tendency to ask close-ended questions, it comes into the foreplay. So
Yes.
keeping that in check is a bit difficult. Otherwise, knowing about the context, and then whenever they're giving certain answer, then probing further on that answer, why they are thinking like this, why they are doing like this, which is not in the interview guide. So deviating from the interview guide and then coming back to the interview guide. So that is also one technique that we need to master in this qualitative research data collection.
Okay, thank you, Ria. Thank you so much. Anyone else? And she also made a statement. See, our training is since beginning as an MBBS or as an MD student, our training is always such that we are in a habit and tune of asking close-ended questions. Like while history taking also we ask, do you have this, this, this? Do you have this? Do you have that? No, yes. So the whole training of MBBS curriculum is like history taking and talking and then examination, giving those findings to our mentors or during the exam. It is always like close-ended question. So that it is, we say now, old habit dies hard. So whenever you'll go, although you know that what is close-ended and what is open-ended, but there is a tendency to ask close-ended question. And then you realize, oh shit, you are asking a close-ended question. Or when you go through your interview guide only and the responses which you have gotten, then you will also realize that, oh, this is close-ended, this is close-ended. So we improve upon ourselves. So again, like Jennifer is also telling the same thing with repeated interview. If you are in habit, and I'll suggest that before you actually go into the field, please test that interview with with at least 4 or 5 people, maybe with your colleague, with some other patients, and then you go and actually do the interview, because it is easier said than done. It looks that, oh, there's nothing in it, just have to go and ask people, but it is not an easy task, because all these problems. I think I just want to have one more opinion from any other participant. Arun Funhera, Mrinalini, or any other person who has already done. Yesterday, I think there was one more girl from who has submitted a qualitative research or who has done a research. Yeah.
Ma'am, myself, Dr. Mrinalini.
I'm Mrinalini, yeah.
My PG student was doing qualitative analysis on isoniazid prophylaxis.
Okay. Yes.
Isoniazid therapy.
Yeah.
So in that, she had experiences with taking consent. They were, especially for healthcare workers, they were reluctant when they were taking a recorder.
Okay.
These things, this was our experience mainly, not with the question.
Okay, so this happened with 1 or 2 healthcare worker, or everyone refused for recording?
No, as in we begin just now, ma'am. So 1 or 2.
Okay. This may happen, but generally it is our experience that out of maybe if 1 or 2% if they refuse, otherwise most of them they agree. If the questions are, because you introduce them with the topic and you tell them what are the, that's why we say, like these days we will see in the ethical this thing that you should share the, although in our setup we assume that the people are not that literate, or maybe that we are not in a habit of sharing. Otherwise you should be sharing the interview guide beforehand to the people with whom you are going to take the interview. Like if in case of a healthcare worker, you should take their email, and if they are not accessible through email, you can give them a hard copy in Hindi and in English, and then and that should be not a very complete, because see, it is a very rough guide. We call it as a semi-structured guide because there will be more questions which are not there in the interview guide, and there might be a scenario when you don't feel like asking questions which is already there in the interview guide. So it is not a very rigid guide, it is a rough guide, and you should share that rough guide always beforehand to the participant so that they know. Because many a time you will see that, like we also conducted interview during HIV time also, when we conducted a project on HIV, the perception of people, and for RSV also. And whenever I used to take appointment for DIO, from DIO or SIO, they used to ask me, what special thing are you going to ask? Can you share that maybe the questions? Because they thought that it is going to be something, very technical, and, I will be asking questions which they have not read or which they will not be able to answer. Then I said that it is a very general questions, but still we mail them. So you can do that you can mail the questionnaire, or you can send the questionnaire in a hard copy to the participant whom you think that they will be your potential responder. So that is one good way of avoiding that, recording if when they refuse, because they don't know what you are going to ask. So they are in preconception, that some sensitive information you may record, or it may go into the media, or some, and TB, since again it is a disease which is attached with taboo like HIV, so they might think that something, they might do something with the recording. So yes, I can understand. Any other person who will share any other experience with the qualitative?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Excuse me, ma'am. Ma'am,
Okay.
I just want to ask if we'll be
Yeah.
sharing the folder or the material what we are going to ask, won't they modify their questions, modify the answers?
No, the answer is all about the perception. See, we are not asking them very technical thing. We just ask them. So whatever, if they will have a time to think, and this is a very rough guide. You may change, like if while taking the interview, like we will see in today's session, maybe with the undergraduate student. So you are giving them more time to think and to respond. It is not, they will not, there's nothing to change actually. You will see that because it is not a technical thing. You are asking about have they felt any time that discrimination is being done with them, and if you share with them, there is no harm. Even if they change, what will they change? I don't think that, and that is a, I mean, in West, whenever they do that, they share the interview guide beforehand. And I don't think any possibility of changing the response, because it is the perception. How can you change the perception? And that too they can do during the actual interview also. We talked about the social desirability bias yesterday. So if you're asking something which they think that by saying so, if they will be tabooed, or if the interviewer will think that I am not that literate, or I'm not that smart, or I don't belong to that background, they may change during the interview also. That may happen. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. And if it happens, you will come to know while you are taking there will be some conflicting statement in the interview itself. That you will see in one of the in-depth interview. I think we have a in-depth interview demo where that interviewer, that responder, he is changing his response because of this bias. So then you will come to know. And in that case, you may take a call not to have that particular interview in your data, and you may increase have one more interview just to include that. Okay. Otherwise, there's no harm. Even if that conflicting, you can report that particular thing, that the person is because of that, he like that will be your analytical memo that he's giving conflicting statement. Okay. So then moving ahead, so start with some broader questions and then narrow down to know the each details. And then you ask hypothetical questions. Now, what is a hypothetical question? So a hypothetical question is like if you cannot ask a direct question. So that this is a one question, like after amputation, how your life got changed. So if you have to reframe this question as a hypothetical question, how you will reframe this question? Please respond in the chat box. So yes, how can you differentiate between your present and past? How can you differentiate? Does your quality of life worsen after amputation? Do you think people who are fully able leads better life than you? Yes, that's a good question. If you're not, yes, that is also very, Veena is also writing, if you've not been amputated, what all things you may do in your life. Yes, very good. So I think you all got the nag of asking a hypothetical question. Riya is writing, suppose you or your family member had a limb removed by surgery, then what do you think will happen to your daily routine? Yes, very good. So all of you are right, because we know that in qualitative, there is no wrong. Everyone is right. It's the perspective. So like, what could be the hypothetical question in such cases? So like one Veena wrote the same thing, that what do you think would have been different in your life if you have not been your leg amputated? So this is somehow a hypothetical question. Then the second question is, if you are studying a student belief about a group activity, and one of the question which you asked, like, what do you suggest to improve this group activity? Now again, reframe this question. What do you suggest to improve group activity? Because if you ask this question to the student, they will think that who am I or why I should be suggesting. So the hypothetical question could be like, imagine that you are a teacher, and then how will you plan if this task is assigned to you? How will you plan a group activity? So this is one of the example of hypothetical questions. Now think about a data analysis while framing questions. Whenever you plan a question, whenever you plan an interview guide, always think about the data analysis whenever you are framing the questions, because if you think about this perspective, you will try to probe more, you will try to interrogate more, and you will try to get what you want. So let's develop an interview guide. So there is a step. So we have discussed that steps of developing an interview guide. So open a new Word document, write your research question first over that Word document. Now, if you have got one research question, two research question, or three research question, based on that, focus on one research question and then try as many questions as possible. Whatever is coming to your mind, try writing that, and which is relevant to that topic. And then again, once you have written a rough guide, then again you revisit, refine, and rearrange your question order, because initially you have gone according to the research question, but you may find it later that a particular sequence of the particular question should be changed. So you may refine and you may rearrange those questions in sequence. So just I will show you, I will demonstrate one research question, this development of an interview guide, and then you will be doing it in the breakout room. So the aim of the research aim is to assess the perception of care and treatment among HIV positive patients at the antiretroviral treatment center. So this was one of the project which we undertook, and we got 2 published paper also. So this in this we identified 3 objectives, and the 3 research questions which we identified were, the first one was, what are the perceptions of care and treatment among HIV positive patients at ART center across 6 districts of Bihar? What are the barriers to access care, if any, as perceived by the HIV positive patients? And what are the perceptions of HIV positive patients among healthcare personnel at ART center and community members? And we had 3 stakeholders in this: HIV positive patients, the doctors who were the private practitioners as well as the government doctors, and the community members who were the non-HIV positive members. We interviewed those people also. So there were 3 stakeholders. So that's why we were talking about the triangulation procedure yesterday. And this triangulation is like, we have taken 3 stakeholders and we did FGD and this in-depth interview also. So now we will, I'll show you. So like, these are the 3 broad research questions. I'm deleting, I have written something initially. So the first research question is, what are the perceptions of care and treatment among HIV positive patients at ART center? This was my first research question. So this research question, obviously it will have some opening statement. So we talked about that ice breaking and general questions. So you should begin about some general questions regarding that person so that the person starts speaking. So like, I may type like, tell me something about yourself. In this, you can ask like the prompts will be, you may ask if it is a lady or if it is a gentleman. Then you may ask regarding work, if he's a working, occupation, a family. You can ask this question, or family, from both family, etc. So this is about the general question. Then the second question is how you came to know regarding your disease status. This would be your second, this can be your second question. I'm just typing. It is not a strict this thing. Whatever is coming to your mind, you can start writing and typing that in the interview guide. And then again, you can rearrange it later. So I will write like, and I have done the literature review. So I have things in my mind, like what the previous authors and previous literature search they are yielding. So that backup is there in my mind. And with that backup, I am framing the interview question. Then again, I may ask like what kind of services, because we read about the hospital AIMS Delhi experience. So you need to ask about what services. So maybe I may ask, and we discussed about what, why, and how. So we should start with the what question. So I may ask like what services you get. So this could be my another question, like what type of services you get in the ART center. Then they may tell that they get medicine and all those things, and then you may further probe regarding those components, because now you don't know, you know from the literature search, but you don't know what the person is getting. So once you've asked regarding these services, because the first is the perception and care of treatment. So you need to ask what component of care and treatment they are getting, and then you may ask the perception. And then you may ask that how do they feel about the care which they get at the center. So then again, you may ask like if they come there for follow-up also, you may ask like how the follow-up is done there. You may ask this also. So this is one of the research question, and you may keep on typing on a blank Microsoft Word, and again or a Google Doc, depending on your preference. And in this case, if two people are doing a project simultaneously, then two people can make their separate interview guide, and then you can club these together, or you people can sit together and frame also. It is up to you. So the second research question is, what are the barriers in accessing the care? Then you can write like what difficulty they feel in accessing care, in accessing the care at ART center. And like if you can ask this question, the third one, this one, like what is the barrier to accessing a care? In this, you may ask a hypothetical question, like we discussed, like if you are the in charge of the ART center, then how will you improve the services? By asking such question, it is a question which is a hypothetical question, like we did in the teacher. Like you are asking from a student, like if you are a teacher and if you have to organize a group activity, how will you do that? So this is one of the hypothetical question. And then again in the research question 3, you can write, because it is the perception of HIV and community members too. So you can ask this question like, how would you interact with patients? This will be the question for the community members which are non-HIV positive. So you may ask like, how would they interact with HIV positive patients. So again, and you can keep on writing questions. So this is one just to demonstrate you, and then I will show you the actual interview guide which we formed. That was for, you can see that there are 3 parts of this interview guide. So we had an interview guide for HIV positive patients. Then again, these were some of the questions, like the general questions about how the person is feeling and how the past year was for the person. And then regarding other questions that we will share these with you. And then again, there was an interview guide for the health personnel. So in this interview guide, and again, we have written a note that this interview guide is intentionally limited in order to allow the patient to primarily drive the conversation and area of inquiry within a broader domain. That means this is just an interview guide. That's why we don't call it as a we attach a word guide. Means this interview guide is just to guide you. Otherwise, there are no hard and fast questions that you should be asking the questions like this and you cannot deviate from this. No, you can always deviate from this guide depending on the response which you are getting, because you are not well aware that each individual, and we know there are multiple perspectives. So in many situations, there may be a case that your questions are entirely different from these broad guidelines. This is for the interview personnel, this is for the health personnel, and then there is an interview guide for the community members. So with this was just a demonstration. Then there are a few questions. So can I change the wordings of the questions during interview? What is your answer? Yes, no, or can't say? Please type in the chat box. Yes. So you all are very right. Definitely you have to change your wording because it is just a guide, and you have to reframe your wording or sentence while you are taking the interview. So the second question is, can I change the order of questions during interview? Can you do that? Changing the order of the questions. So Devayan, Veena, Nitesh, Jennifer, Ashwini. Yes, everyone is writing. Manisha, Mrinalini. So yes, you are right. You can definitely change the questions. Now, can I ask an extra question during the interview? Yes, definitely. Your interview may go in a direction which you have not thought of initially, entirely new direction. So you are right. So that's why we call it as a semi-structured questionnaire, because in unstructured questionnaire, the researchers start the interview without any framing any question, and with only research question, one RQ, and then frame the questions in the real time based on the responses which he gets from the participant. So now if I ask this question, don't you think that AIIMS Delhi is a good hospital? Do you? Can we ask such questions in an interview? No. Yes, you are right. So where there is a 2 questions in one question, we call it as a double barrel question. So you should avoid asking double barrel question when there are more than one question within one question. And then participant asks for this we have talked of also, like ask for the interview guide after giving consent. What will you do? So you can give them, we have already asked about this. So now this is the assignment for the breakout room, and you have to develop an interview guide, and your research aim to explore about how digital learning sources are affecting the perception of medical students towards conventional teaching methods. And because all of us are in medical college, so you are also well versed with this changing scenario. And that's why we want to develop a questionnaire by all of you. I mean, all of you will do that. And the time given is 10 minutes. And you have to frame at least 3 questions, 3 to 4 questions. Everyone has to frame. And it has to be done in a doc file. And then it will be copy and pasted in the main this thing. Google Doc, it has been shared to the mentors. So Rajat, Manisha, and Neha, Purushottam, and SSV, it has been shared to you. So please use that Google Doc in getting the questions, because all the participants can type simultaneously, and they will write the questions in the breakout room in that their page number. Okay, so is instruction clear to all the participant and to all the mentors?
Yes.
Okay. Shreyas, can you please open the breakout room? Day before yesterday in the evening, or we always talk of these recall biases and the questions which are based on recall, and it is difficult for me to recall, like what did I eat yesterday morning or in the breakfast during the daytime also. So all these questions which are based on memories, it is difficult for someone to answer then and there, because it is not an option and I'm not seeing any option. So whatever you are asking, that person will take at least some time to respond. So you should have that much patience, and just don't show that in your body language, because we will talk about the qualities of a qualitative researcher. But the first and foremost quality a qualitative researcher should have, that is the patience. If you don't have patience, obviously the participant, even if you're not showing it through words, they will understand it through the non-verbal language. And these days we know that the importance of non-verbal language is 70%. 70% is your non-verbal language. That means your body gesture, your posture, your face, your distance from the participant, how you sit, how you how you respond to them. So all these non-verbal cues, they carry 70% value in any conversation. Its verbal part is only 30%. So through non-verbal cues also, you should not make them uncomfortable, that they are not remembering, or it is taking a lot, they are taking a lot of your time. So that is very important. So you should be able to control your nerves, to control yourself, in case you happen to interview a participant which is not giving you the responses very easily or very quickly, because it is our responsibility to help them remember. So please remember this. The second thing, there should be two things when you consider developing an interview guide: what you should be asking and what you should not be asking. That is also very important. So what type of questions you should avoid, and what type of questions it is desirable to ask. So any interview guide has 3 sections. So you also have, when you develop an interview guide for any question, any research question, so it should have 3 parts. So it should have an opening section, it should have a middle section, and it should have a closing section. So in the opening section, you may start with the introduction of the topic, like you explain what this research is all about and why you are doing this research. You explain the context also, and you tell your background also, and you tell about the ethical issues also, that anytime if they wish to move out of the study, they are free to do so, and you take a kind of consent. In recording the interview, we take a consent verbal also, like we press the recorder on and we ask them, we narrate everything. For the recording the interview also, we take a consent that all these things, whatever we are talking, this will be recorded in a tape recorder, in a recorder, or in a phone, and then you take their consent over phone also. And again, if it is possible, you should take a written consent also. You should not force them, but you should take a written consent and maintain them in a folder, because anytime if your article gets published, they may ask you about even the ethical this thing. It is important to have the consent of all those participants whom you have interviewed, so that no one can say that they were not willing or they have been pressurized to give the interview. So you should have a verbal consent as well as a written consent. In the middle section is the most important part of the interview guide, which has got the interview questions, the topics. With your interview questions, there are prompts and probes also. So now, what is the difference between prompt and what is a probe? So basically, a prompt is something where you are giving them a synonym or a situation where they will feel, they will remember the things and they will respond. What is a probe? So probe is basically a more depth inquiry. Suppose yesterday we were talking about the HIV transmission, and we saw that the HIV is transmitted. One lady said that the HIV is transmitted through touch. So that touch, I will probe further. What does she mean? And few participants, they responded also that you should be probing about the meaning of touch, because we have understood that in the interview we should ask silly questions, and that silly questions means we should be like in a role play where we don't know anything. We are not a doctor there, we are not a very learned person there. So you should be making inquiry about each and every word and each and every sentence which they ask and which they respond. So that's why this is a probe. So I hope you must have understood the difference between a prompt and a probe. So prompt is to make them memorize, to make them recall the things, and probe is to make a deeper inquiry about the topic or about the word which they are responding. And then there are the closing sections where if any additional point, if the responder wants to make, he or she can make. If there are any queries from her or his end or from your end, you can ask, and they can also ask. And then again, thanks giving at the end. So this is the section, the opening section, the middle section, and the closing section of an interview guide. So is there any fixed guideline to make an interview question? So please respond. What is your opinion? Is it yes, no, or can't say? So no. Yes. So you are right that there is no fixed guideline to make an interview questions, but there are some important tips in developing an interview guide. So in the first tip is do a literature review. So you should be doing a thorough literature search, because by that you will have a overall idea what was the previous literature, what is the previous literature is conveying regarding any topic. So like we do in the quantitative research, you should do a thorough literature search in the qualitative also, and you should try capturing all those important themes and words. And we discussed about that